Greetings! In this video I'll be painting an Intercessor of the Silver Skulls chapter. I've used a standard Primaris Intercessor here, but with a number of changes. I have a 3D printed Stalker bolt rifle in his offhand, and a 3D printed Mark 8 helmet in place of the regular Mark 10. The pauldron comes from the Deathwatch Veterans kit, and I've used pouches and other gubbins from my bits box, and I've also used a trophy from an old Orcs kit. After I was finished building, I primed the model black. I started by applying a base coat of Ironhand steel. Metallic paints are often either thick and cover well, or thin and don't. Most Citadel paints are a bit thick, so I've tried to thin this a little and apply smooth coats. Only a touch of water was used. You can see it's not covering completely. A second coat applied in the same way will fix that. I think it's more important the armour stays smooth, instead of favouring a single faster but thicker coat. I think I applied roughly 3 coats, mainly focusing on the look instead of strictly adhering to the number of coats. Thinking that the Silver Skull should be more silver, I jumped up to Runefang steel and applied this on many of the pronounced surfaces. It can be a bit difficult to make out the difference. Runefang steel is a bit more white, but has similar metallicity. Happy with the armour for now, I switched to Black Legion to begin painting all the black bits. The Silver Skulls paint their right knee pad and both their pauldrons black. Along with these spots, I cleaned up the outer casing of the Stalker bolt rifle, as well as base coating the undersuit and power pack cables. It can be a bit difficult to get coverage of metallic or gloss paints, so I applied another coat when needed. Silver Skulls are Ultramarine successors, formed in the second founding. They have a lot of background lore, but I found a bit that I could customise the model around. During a campaign, when certain foes, usually leaders or champions, are killed, they often take the heads as trophies. These trophies are then carried by the warrior throughout the remainder of the battle. Afterwards, they flens the heads and immerse them in silver. This yields them a silver skull for permanent display in their battle barges or fortress monastery. In preparation for the transfers, I applied a gloss varnish over the right pauldron and right knee pad. This helps prevent the visible edge you often get from decals. I switched to Thondia brown to base coat the pouches and belt. At this point I had no idea how I was going to paint the trophy, but I figured it might be good to start with a brown instead of silver for the hair. Now for an acrylic wash. I prepared a few drops of Vallejo's dark grey wash with a drop of water and applied it all over the silver. I tried a light approach at first, making sure I didn't go too heavy with it, but I got a bit more confident with the application after a bit. I wanted it a bit more heavy on the weapon and other steel details, the bits that would still be metallic if the armour wasn't. With the gloss varnish on the pauldron and knee set by now, I cut out the decals, a battle line tactical marking and a low gothic squad numeral. I applied a coat of microsol, then I applied the decals. After the microsol had dried, I used some micro set to help the decal fit better to the curved surfaces. I dried it with a cotton tip, then applied a second coat. Back to the leather, I used Skrag brown to layer up the edges and create some fake high points in preparation for the next colour. A scratchy highlight with Deathclaw brown finishes the leather details. Three colours seem to be the sweet spot for layering. You can do more if you want to push it even further. Next, I switched to Steel Legion Drab for the ribbon on the Stalker bolt rifle, applying a simple base coat. I also decided to base coat the skin of the trophy at the same time. It's a fairly old sculpt, so I tried to go soft with building up the base coat to give myself some extra room for adjustments later. I highlighted the ribbon with Morghast bone, applying it in the line pattern. Going back to the trophy, I used Rakarth flesh to layer up the face. I hit most spots, leaving only a little bit of Steel Legion Drab to show through. At this point I figured I'd get the face pale and then tint it with some colours later. Going even lighter, I then applied Pallid Wych flesh. Started by hitting the edges, but I went overboard as most surfaces ended up being painted. At this point I went back to the tactical marking. The silver skulls indicate company by the colour of their tactical marking. I chose to use Imperial Fist, a yellow colour, for second company. This contrast paint works well to stain the colour of white transfers. I've tried other colours in the past and they haven't performed as well. If you're trying the same process, I recommend using the light colour or applying thin layers. Back to the trophy again, I thinned down some Magos purple with some water and applied it pretty much all over. This served to tint the skin as well as shading in the recesses. While it was still drying, I brought in some Guilliman flesh to reduce the purple tones. As the previous layer was still wet, I could mix the two together on the model. This was simply to remove paint while I was adding the brown tone. I didn't intend this, but it works to highlight the facial structure, so it worked out. I then switched to Mephiston red to block in the scope and eye lenses. The next layer was Evil Sunz Scarlet, filling in about 2/3 of each lens. About 1/3 of the lens was then filled with Wild Rider red. This helmet has fairly narrow eye lenses, making it hard for the camera and myself to see at the same time. The final highlight, or rather just a small dot, was done with Lugganath orange. By now the contrast paints on the trophy had dried. I was pretty happy so far. For the fragmentation grenade I used Wordbearer's red to paint the frag sleeve. I didn't do too great, but it'll look fine by the end. I switched to Mechanicus Standard Grey to highlight the black on the bolt weapons. Yet again back to the trophy, I used Slaanesh Grey to highlight the skin. I don't think this had much of a positive effect though. Wanting the trophy to appear more fleshy, I tried some Reikland Flesh Shade to wash the skin. I then switched to Dawnstone for the hair. I figured grey hair might suit better here. I jumped up to Administratum Grey to layer the hair further. I kept most of the brush strokes towards the middle of the hair bunch. And finally up to Ulthorn Grey for the very middle of the hair. And a little bit on the eyebrows too. I went back to Evil Sunz Scarlet for the Y here on his arm, and for the wires on the Stalker bolt rifle. Most of the work was done, so I was just looking for spots that needed attention now. I felt like the metal wasn't dark enough compared to the silver armour, so I tried using Vallejo's black wash over the earlier dark grey wash. I think that's a bit better. I noticed the wrist lights were still unpainted, so I went straight to Wild Rider Red and painted them in. And I followed that with a dot highlight of Lugganath Orange. For the text on the Stalker Bolt Rifle, I used a 0.15mm micron pen and tried to write the word Skull in fancy lettering. It's not perfect, but it's better than what I could do with a paintbrush. And if you make a mistake, you can put a little bit of water on your finger and rub it off, and have another go. Now for the Enamel Wash. I used AK's wash for aircraft engines. I wasn't sure if I needed it on this one, but I decided to just in case. A wash like this can help bring the model together, especially if you've used a lot of different colours like I've done here, especially with that trophy on his hip. I'm going for a thin application, intending for this to look like dust and grime building up over time. The presence of the trophy implies he's currently on campaign, so it makes sense for a bit of grime at the very least. I'm happy with the enamel effect. I don't think I need to remove any. I went back to acrylics with Stormhost Silver, intending to bring the silver back out again. I highlighted any surfaces I wanted to appear shiny and clean, and then more surfaces as I got a bit carried away. If anything was going to be silver though, it had to be the skull. With that finished, I based the model and varnished it. You can check out my Storm Speeder video for how I do the basing if you want. And here we have it, an Intercessor of the Silver Skull's second company. Overall I'm happy with this one. I tried a few new things here, and while some weren't great, the end result's fine. The trophy was an interesting endeavour. I think I managed to get a believable look for a not so fresh, but not yet desiccated look. The silver looks good, but I couldn't get the gunmetal different enough to easily distinguish the two. The helmet proved a bit problematic as well. The overall shape proved difficult to highlight and shade, with the model's smooth transitions between the recesses and the edges. The lenses are also very small. Maybe this helmet would work better for a different chapter, one that uses non-metallic colours perhaps. Anyway, I think it looks good, and I hope you enjoyed this one, maybe learned something from my experimenting. If all goes to plan, I intend to do another requested chapter next. I hope you'll stick around for that video. In the meantime, let me know what chapter you'd like to see. I'll add it to my growing list.